Hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Lethabo Sithole. I'm a legal and development practitioner, and I specialize in international business, trade, and investment law and policy. I am also the managing director at Amila Africa, which is a boutique advisory firm that focuses on investments and trade. And our core mission really is to facilitate the flow of trade and investment into and within the African continent. We have a pan-African mandate, and I am passionate about the inclusion and the involvement and the advancement of young people and women in trade. So, export capacity development and export readiness is one of the services that we offer at Amila Africa as advisors. But we also have a product, and it's a 3-month program that we've developed over the years. And the program and the products really works in a way that it's like an incubation and accelerating program that SMEs that are already trading, that already have markets that they're accessing, already have products that they would like to trade, can go through and increase their export capacity. It would not be export readiness, but it would be export capacity, but in the same breath, also making sure that they're accessing the finance that they require to trade. So we appreciate that, trade finance and the world of trade finance is very complex, and sometimes it sounds intimidating and daunting. And so in addition to export capacity development, we do an access to trade finance part in the program, and we demystify trade finance, we unpack it, we help them navigate, what compliance looks like, what requirements look like, and which trade finance institutions, whether traditional banks or non-traditional banks, are available for them to access these funds or facilities. And in terms of export readiness, what we do at Amila is work with businesses really to identify where they are, if they're already producing, if they're looking to produce, if they're looking to export markets. But we do a lot of things from helping them with actually export, so actual export and compliance. We do a lot of market access opportunities. If you're looking to scale, if you're looking to expand into different markets, we can help you with, the regulation that you would need to navigate in order to practice in those markets. We're able to plug people into trade fairs, trade shows, exhibitions, both on the continent and in other parts of the world, in Europe and also in America. I'm an AGOA certified advisor. And so, we also do offer how to trade under certain trade agreements, what legal requirements, what regulations, what laws you would need to navigate in order to access those markets, and also exploit some of the benefits that come with trading under certain regimes. So I think that's how we're driving export, how we're supporting SMEs on the continent to drive and enhance their export capacity. We really appreciate one big thing though, and it's that SMEs on the continent don't have the financial resources to engage consultants like us. Engaging a consultant can cost you anything between $80 to $300 an hour. And typically SMEs don't have that kind of money. And so we really facilitate and we encourage and we promote and we advocate for development finance institutions and foundations and donor agencies, and even just commercial banks, anybody who has the money, who does, and governments, who see the development of SMEs who export on the continent as a priority, to put the fund together to finance the program. So the program I spoke about earlier, how we sell it is not to SME. We sell it to development partners. They finance it on behalf of the SMEs so that the SMEs can access technical services without having to pay for them. Okay, great. So trade finance is very complex. We in our team have an incredible individual who's worked in trade finance for many years, and in particular in export finance. And what we do is help the businesses get to compliance. So the thing with trade finance is compliance, right? A lot of the reasons why, it's said that over 50-something% of the trade finance applications that are put forward are rejected. 70% of them are from SMEs, and it's even worse for women and youth-led businesses. And so really just understanding the why these transactions are failing. We've done a lot of research into that. We've done a lot of extensive research into finding out why they're failing. And then working with banks and government organs to say, look, maybe we should change or reduce the requirements and make sure that they fit for the market. So that's one thing we do. We do policy advisory in that space. And then the other thing we do is we try to help them navigate trade finance. So we try to help you raise the facility. So we sit down, we look at your business, we look at where you are, we get you to where you need to be. And then we also have relationships with some trade finance institutions, both traditional and non-traditional ones. And what we found through our research is the reality is the average trade finance facility that commercial banks offer on the continent is about $2 million. And the average application or need for trade finance from an African SME is anything between $1,000 and $250,000. So there's a huge gap between what is offered and what is required. And so we've done a great deal of work also identifying people who've come up with alternative solutions, so alternative trade finance institutions, and we've created a database of them. And we tried to bring them into conversations with SMEs who are in need of trade finance that wouldn't qualify according to the requirements and the compliance standards from traditional banks. But also I don't want to bash traditional banks. They are led by the Basel Accords as to how they should be giving or dispersing of trade finance. And so there's a lot of work to do. The trade finance gap is crazy and it keeps on expanding, but we do our bit, and that's what we do, either advocating for either a change in standards and requirements or some kind of policy incentive, and then also making sure that there's access to information for informed decision making, but also that you also have the right documents and you are actually compliant. Okay, so in terms of value chain development, it's become quite a topical thing, right? People now call it different things: resource beneficiation, exports of value-added goods. Look, the African continent has traditionally relied on the export of raw materials and then importing finished goods or value-added goods. And that's the reason why our industrial agenda is not as high as we would like it to be. Our industrial capacity is not where we would like it to be. But also we have a dire unemployment issue on the continent. And it's because we're not producing. We're taking coal straight from Amila to Germany, and they're powering up their industries. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't trade in our resources, but developing value chain is done through an industrial agenda and through industrial policy and industrializing our country. So I would say that how businesses and SMEs can get involved in developing value chains, but also in participating in the value chain, is looking at processing and production. So obviously, traditionally also, African businesses are sourcing raw materials or exporting finished goods and trading. So you're like repackaging and trading. But if you want to play along the value chain, for example, if you're in textile, right? Maybe you want to go into cotton farming. Maybe you want to go into processing. Then you want to go into textile production. Or you want to go into transport. Or you want, the value chain is huge, but there are opportunities across if we acknowledge that we need to invest and play in these spaces. So it can't be imported stuff, Cotton leaves West Africa and then it comes back as Ankara. Ankara is not produced in Africa. And so, we need to change those narratives. And how we do it, I definitely think is government providing the policy, enabling policy and enabling infrastructure. And this is done through special economic zones and industrial parks. If there are special economic zones and industrial parks that cater to the processing and production needs of SMEs and give them the facilities and the infrastructure they need, then I think that they can play across the value chain, and then they can also trade in value-added goods. We want to see that not only in textile and apparel. We want to see that in the energy space. I think one thing that came up in our conversation today is the issue around critical minerals, We want to see cobalt. We want to see lithium. We want to see them being processed and batteries being created in South Africa or in Nigeria or in Zimbabwe and Mozambique that have huge deposits of some of these critical minerals. Special economic zones and industrial parks. There's an EV battery project that's been put together by the government of the DRC and the government of Zambia with the support of Arise IIP, UNECA, and African Bank. And I think that projects like that are very important to ensure that we're not exporting raw materials, we're processing and we're creating those storage batteries here to sell to Tesla, to sell to all the electric vehicle companies in the world, and thereby diversifying our economies and creating jobs. Non-tariff barriers are so broad, and it's so hard to sort of like hone in on which ones are the most prominent. But I think that the ones that we're already working on overcoming as a continent have to do with standards and harmonization of processes. Just harmonizing policies and processes. And that's what initiatives like the AFCFTA are great for. So think about this, for example. Because our markets are very fragmented, we had different policies. So imagine you're moving goods from South Africa to Nigeria and you're moving them by road. And at every border you stop at, somebody's asking you for different kind of paperwork. Each country has different requirements, different rules, different standards. If that's how we work, then trade is expensive. And it's going to take you a very long time to get to Nigeria. And, along the way, you might meet somebody who says, actually, no, you're not going to move it because it doesn't comply with our country's rules or laws. And the single most and the biggest hindrance to intra-African trade is non-tariff barriers. Because we have, in our different regional economic communities, reduced tariffs. There are many of them, they're very prominent, and many of the regional economic communities have a non-tariff barrier reporting mechanism. I think that the more we report them, the more we can identify which ones are prominent and then work with government and especially customs officials to respond and to change them, to resolve them as well. I think there's a huge gap in like the policy framework that are created and then how customs officials are being capacitated to implement some of these policies. So I think that's another big thing that we can do to ensure that we're not dealing with a customs official who just didn't know that the law had changed or who is just making your life difficult for no good reason. But I think that the customs officials are doing great work. They just need to be capacitated. We need to standardize rules. We need to harmonize our processes and our procedures. And there we can have very smooth trade. I think it's called trade facilitation, right? And then we can facilitate trade efficiently. There was a question on social media a few weeks ago, and they said, if you were president, what is the most immediate thing that you would resolve to recover our economy? And that's from a South African context, right? And I say from a South African context because we are the most developed and most industrial country on the continent. And people said a whole lot of things, but a lot of people actually said infrastructure and logistics. So I would definitely say creating more trade and logistics routes and infrastructure is a great and a low-hanging fruit to facilitate trade and to ensure the successful implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. There's a huge need for logistics and like efficient, quick logistic infrastructure. And in some countries, it doesn't exist at all. In some countries, it just needs to be upgraded. So I think that low-hanging fruit that support the implementation, because the AFCFTA is not a white elephant. It is a trade agreement. It's a legal document. The implementation thereof is up to me, it's up to you, it's up to all Africans who want to see it come to fruition to do. And I think to support traders and also to support trade and, export and import, we need to definitely improve our logistics infrastructure. The second thing that I think is a great opportunity It's the ability to produce and process based on our different comparative and competitive advantages. And some countries have cocoa, some countries have cotton, some countries have shea, and then you have countries in South Africa that are leading in terms of producing cosmetic goods. And I think that if we are finding out what our different strengths are and then trading in those raw materials and setting up hubs for production and processing before we export both within our countries and to the world, then we will trade. Because you need goods to trade. You need to trade goods, and you need to trade services. So for the AfCFTA to work, we need to work on Made in Africa, a Made in Africa agenda. We need to have goods that we can buy. If we're constantly reliant on exports of raw materials, we all have raw materials. We all have gold, we all have coal. Some people have lithium, some people have manganese. We all have natural resources. But if I can buy my hair care product from a lady who makes hair care products in Ghana, who use some products from Tanzania, and it's really just going to work, then we are trading in goods that we can use as everyday consumers, which is really what we need. So I think that's definitely where the opportunity is. Sharing our raw materials, sharing our interests, sharing our strengths, and using them to produce on the continent, made in Africa, support African produced goods. And yeah, that's the opportunity for me.